Hey everyone, how's everyone's Tuesday doing? Go ahead and get rolling here. And so yeah, like we posted, wanted to kind of jump on and do this webinar on how to write higher premium policies in general, whether that's PNC or life, um, and go after some bigger policies and some ways to insulate that book of business that you're working on. And so with that, a little, I want to take you through the exact presentation that I used to write the premiums, and one screen too many here. There we go. So a little background on me. I was a team member with State Farm for 5 years and ran an agent's office and their MOA office, which is second office in the same city. For those of you that aren't familiar with what a MOA office is, and I did that for 3 years before opening an independent brokerage. And then in 2015 and 2016, I actually was a top team member in my district, writing more premium by 25% than the second place person. And I did this while also being, both years was ranked 10th in total policy count. So I wrote fewer policies than 9 other people in my district, but was able to write way more premium than any of them. And was also able to, with using the same system, train multiple agent aspirants during this time that have gone on to be successful agents of their own and open their own agencies with this. So I wanted to take you guys through the exact presentation that I used to write that much premium during that time, and what I still would recommend, because I just, in all my years of working in the insurance field, have not found anything better to leading a prospect or a client along the process of evaluating their own risks and shifting the conversation from you selling them a product to them telling you what they need slash want you to buy. So a little disclaimer, this isn't my presentation. I didn't create it. It's actually a presentation called a Your World presentation by somebody named Bill Whitley. However, over years of using this, I have tweaked it to kind of fit the needs of the clients that I've worked for and worked with, and I can kind of vouch for it in that regard. The biggest piece with this is that what I always try to accomplish with the clients that I was working with is I wanted to switch the conversation from me being their insurance agent to me being their risk advisor and them telling me what risks they want me to help protect. And in switching that, I switched it from a sales conversation to a consulting conversation. I wanted to be their advisor, their consultant, and their answer person, not their salesperson, not just another insurance agent. I didn't want to be just like the guy down the street that could sell them an auto policy for the same liability coverages with a different price point. That's the struggle that we all fight with as insurance agents, is that the reality is we all sell the same products. We all have the same basic things that we're presenting. It's just our price points are different. And so how do we get away from that price conversation? We don't sell a product. We sell a service. And that service for me that I always wanted to provide was that consulting advising service. And so that's what this presentation kind of allows you to do. And so I want to jump in and just kind of almost do a role play of just walking you guys exactly through the conversation that I would have with a client when I would have them come through the doors and sit across the desk from me. With my sales guys, we required that 60% of any new sales came in and met with them in the office, or that they went to them and met with them in person to do this presentation. And we would actually dock their commission if they didn't have 60% of people that they met with. And we did that because we knew that if on the phone you could sell them 25, 50 coverage, in person sitting across from them, there's a shot that you're up in their liability limits to 100, 300, or 250, 500 with a PLUP, or you're getting a life sale now, those kind of things. And so we wanted to get that second, third sale out of it. And that's what this presentation is going to allow you to do. So I would highly recommend using it with new clients even after you've sold them, bringing them into the office, or doing this once a year with your existing clients, because your existing clients already trust you. So when you advise them that they need coverage in different areas, they're going to believe you. So we'll go ahead and jump in here. And like I said, I want to kind of role play and go through, what the exact presentation that I would do with them is. And so I would start the presentation by taking out a piece of paper, just a blank piece of white paper, and putting it on the desk. And we'd jump right into it and say, hey, John, as your risk advisor, I want to take a look at your world and get a better picture of what's going on inside of it. This way I can better recommend some appropriate coverages and see what's important to you for us to cover. I don't want to ever have a conversation with you about something that isn't of priority to you. So is it okay if I ask you a few questions about your world just to get a better understanding of what's going on? Okay, John, here's you. You're the center of your world. Everyone loves you and everybody values you. Everybody wants to be around you. One of the primary reasons for that is because you provide an income. Your income typically is going to go one of two places, John. It's going to either go to your family or to assets. So let's start with your family. Tell me a little bit about your family. Well, John's married to Sally. I always ask what job. What do you do for a living, John? He's a team supervisor at Intel. What does Sally do? Sally's a stay-at-home mom. Okay, awesome. Do you have any kids? Yeah, we have Johnny. He's age 11. Okay, awesome. How about your parents, John? Are they still alive? Yes. And Sally's? Awesome. Both parents are still alive. Johnny's got both his grandparents. That's amazing. That's always fun. I'm sure it makes for a really fun family times. So now, John, let me ask a little bit about your assets. What kind of assets do you own? I know we insure your 2 cars and your home, but what else do we have in place? So you've also got a 401k through work, and you've got life insurance through work. Awesome, John. So you've definitely got a lot of things in place there. You've got a lot of assets that you've worked really hard for your family. So, John, let me summarize this for you. Make sure I heard you correct. You work as a team supervisor at Intel. Sally stays at home as a mom, and you have a son, Johnny, who's aged 11. Your parents, Dave and Debbie, are both alive, and Sally's parents, Bob and Brenda, are both still alive. You've got 2 cars and a house that you're insured with us that we're going to definitely review the coverages on those and make sure you understand what you have on that. You've also got a 401k through work, and you've got life insurance through work for up to $250,000. Is that correct? Awesome, John. So, John, as a risk advisor, I'm primarily concerned with 7 things that I see as the biggest risks to your protecting that income for you. The first risk is your health. And a little side note here, I always started with health because we did not offer health insurance. So I wanted to offer with something that I can't provide coverage for, but I can recommend somebody to, because what it does is at the beginning, it shifts the conversation from I'm trying to sell you a product to I'm just trying to find what the best way to protect your income is. And I can't even provide this product. I'm not going to get anything for this, but I can definitely help you find a way to protect that by referring you to somebody who can. So jump back in here. So your health, obviously if something happens to you, John, and you're laid up and you can't work for an extended period of time, or the medical bills pile up, that's definitely going to affect your income and your ability to provide for your family and pay for those assets. So tell me a little bit about the health coverage you have. What kind of deductibles do you have? What kind of copays, those things? Awesome. And then obviously, John, the next thing that we look at is disability as a risk. If you're unable to work anymore and your income stops, that's definitely going to affect your family and your assets. Now, tell me, John, what disabilities protection do you have in place? Oh, okay, you've got up to 40% through your work if something were to happen to you. Awesome. I'm so happy you have that in place. We potentially have some options with that to maybe cover that other 60% for you. And then, John, the third risk we see is obviously if something were to happen to you, heaven forbid, on top of the grief that Sally and Johnny would feel for losing their husband and father, they're also obviously going to be a struggle there to replace your income. And so I know you have the $250,000 through work, John, and that's great. I'm so happy that you have something in place there. But we could definitely look at some more options for policies that you could own on your own, and policies that could even provide some extra benefits for you if that's something you're interested in, to make sure that Sally and Johnny's future is completely covered. The fourth risk we see, John, is long-term care. Obviously, you're a lot of years away from that. That's not something that's a concern for you today. But the reason I ask why, if your parents are still alive, is because I see all too often that, if something were to happen to Dave, your father, and he were to need continuing care and long-term care, without having something in place, he can very quickly become a financial burden to you. And I have options in place for you that we can get set up to where you can remain Dave's son until the end and not have to be his caregiver and have that financial burden on your income for that. And that's something we can definitely look at if that's an interest to you. The next risk we see is obviously your home, John. I know we have that insured with us, and I want to take just a second to go over those coverages with you and kind of make sure you understand what we have in place. Side note, jump out here. I would, at this point, kind of have the homeowner's policy pulled up either on the computer or printed out and go through and make sure he understands at least the basics, what his liability coverage is, what kind of policy he has. Is an HO3 and HO5, those kind of things. Is it, replacement cost value, actual cost value? What does that mean? And all of those kind of features. I want to make sure that he understands 100% what I'm offering him and what coverage we have in place. So, John, the next liability or risk that we look at with our clients is their auto risk. Obviously, there's the risk of, if you're in an accident, what financial impact that would have on you. And so, John, before we jump into kind of your coverages and reviewing what we have in place for you, let me ask you this: if you were to cause an accident, knock on wood, and you were to cause, $500,000 in damage, both in medical and or property, how much would you want us as your insurance company to cover? More than likely, John's going to say 500,000. Okay, perfect. I totally understand that, and that's definitely what we want to progress towards then. So let me jump into your coverages here and explain what you have in place. At this point, I would do a deep dive into what policies we have available, what they have in place currently right now, what that means for them, specifically on the medical coverage side of that, or the bodily injury side of that. I would definitely dive heavy into that and explain to them, hey, and I know it varies state to state, but here in Arizona, if you were in somebody and they get in an ambulance to go to the hospital to get evaluated, that ambulance ride alone is going to be a minimum of $7,500. If you're carrying the state minimums, half of your liability limits are gone before they've ever seen a doctor, ran a test, got an x-ray. And I'm going to make sure they know that's the risk they're running by carrying lower limits, and explain to them what the benefits of carrying higher limits are, as well as explain to them the benefits of, as an insurance carrier, when there's rate increases, higher liability limits see a lower percentage of rate increases than lower liability limits, because they're seen as less risk. And so I'm going to explain that to him and go, hey, long term, you're actually going to be better off with higher limits, and dive into that. And then, John, the seventh risk that we see when we're talking to clients is we see a liability risk of, if something were to happen and you were to get sued, that would definitely affect your income. It would definitely affect your world. And then with this, because a liability umbrella can be a little bit of a hard thing for people to wrap their minds around, because they think, well, if something happened at my house, my homeowner's insurance covers this. Something happens to my car, my auto insurance covers that. And so explaining the idea of the umbrella can be a hard concept to explain and grasp. So I always tell a story, and I always tell them, look, John, the best way for me to describe what a liability umbrella can do for you is to tell you a story. I had a client, and you guys can use this story. It's a true story. It actually happened to one of my clients. But I had a client, John, who, nice guy, like super, smart, has his life together, was 3 years away from retiring from a community college here in town that he was a college professor at. He was driving home one night, and a monsoon storm hit here, and the rain started coming down, and he went to, look left, looked right, went to make a left-hand turn into his neighborhood, and there's somebody darting across the street to get under a bus stop and get out of the rain, and he never saw him coming and just right into him. They felt horrible. I mean, it devastated him, super emotional about it. And it was $750,000 of medical bills later for the guy that he hit. And John, if he would not have had come in to see us literally 2 months before and upgraded his coverage to 250, 500 with a liability umbrella, he was sitting at 100, 300 coverage. And so out of that $750,000 worth of medical bills, we would have paid $100,000 and he would have been on the hook for $650,000 of medical bills. Do you think that would have definitely impacted his ability to retire in 3 years? Because I have to believe it would. There's not a year that goes by when he doesn't come in for a review and thank us for recommending that he upgrade his coverage and get that liability umbrella in place, because it not only provided for the person that he hit the coverage that he needed, but it saved his retirement. And so tell that story. And again, feel free to listen to the replay and memorize that story and make it your own. It's a true story. So John, my job is, as your risk advisor, is to create a wall of protection around your world so that if a risk happens, it's just going to be able to bounce right off, whatever that risk may be. Now, I wouldn't expect today that we could bite off all the risks. Obviously, life happens, and to have the assumption that, hey, we're going to get something in place to cover every single possible risk that's going to enter your life today, it is unreasonable. But what I would like to do is I would like to ask, what 3 risks concern you the most? And let's take a look at what the options are for those and see if there's anything we can do to plug some of the holes for you today. At that point, I'm going to take a step back and shut up. And I'm going to let John tell me what's important to him. I'll tell you right now, the majority of them, it's going to be a liability umbrella. It's going to be life insurance. And it's probably going to be either health or disability. But the majority of clients, that's going to be what it is. And I'm going to shut up, take a sit, lean back in my chair. And as John tells me what's important to him, I'm going to number them 1, 2, and 3 right underneath there. And I've written all this out on that blank piece of paper I had you pull out. I've written this all as I'm telling it to him in order. And I'm going to put a number under or circle liability. And then I'm going to go into, what does that look like? Okay. You said that if you were to unfortunately have a circumstance like our college professor client happen, you would want that coverage. So let's look at what getting $1 million liability umbrella in place would look like for you. Right now, you're at 5,100 auto coverage and you've got your home with us. And that's awesome. And so I'm so stoked for that. And we would love to get you in place. What we would need to do is we would need to upgrade your auto coverage to 250, 500, because that's the minimum liability limits that we have to have for you to qualify the PLUP. So let me pull your auto policy up here on the computer and see what that would take your auto policy to and your PLUP, and see what overall increase that would be. And then I'd go through that with him. And then, awesome, John. All right, so we've got to look at that. You know where that stands. Now let's go through, what life options we have. I know you've got $250,000 through work, but you don't have anything outside of work. If something were to happen to you and you were to get sick and you had to quit or leave your job before you unfortunately passed away, that policy wouldn't pay out. So would you want to replace that whole $250,000 if something like that would happen, or would you want more or less? And have that life conversation and see where that lands. And then jump in and just kind of go through it like that, piece by piece. And then after we've gone through all the options, again, take a step back and say, okay, John, again, I don't expect you to take care of all of this today. I know you came in just to review your policies. And I just wanted to make you aware of what risks we see and what protections we can put in place for you. What out of here that we've talked about would you like to put into place today? And then again, shut up and let him tell me. I'm not selling him any policies. I'm not selling him any coverages. I'm not selling him anything at all. All I'm doing is advising him at the holes that exist, what the options are for those holes that he finds the most important. And then if he decides, yeah, I do want to get that PLUP in place, let's go ahead and put that in place. I didn't sell him a thing. He sold himself on the importance of covering that risk for himself. And that's the beauty of this conversation, is as you go through it, they're seeing, oh yeah, that does hit for me. That hits for me. That's what's important to me. And you're going to get them to go through it, and they're going to sell themselves on what they want to purchase from you. And again, I would use this with current clients every year. I would also use this with new clients that came in. I would tell every client I ever sold, hey, it's great that I got you set up today. I would love to meet you in person. In fact, I always want to get any new client of mine in the office or come meet you within the first 30 days, just to make sure at the very least that you got all your ID cards and everything like that from our office. So when would be the best time here in the next month for us to get together? And I would set that appointment. If you use this presentation correctly, I can promise you a couple things. One, the client that's sitting across the desk from you is going to say thank you. They're going to respond gratefully for the fact that you took them through this presentation. It's something that agents aren't doing. I guarantee they've never had another insurance agent take them through a presentation like this. They've maybe taken them through a piece of it for life insurance or a piece of it for liability insurance or something like that, but they've never taken them through and looked at the entire world that affects them. So they're going to be thankful for it. I also will promise you that you will increase liability limits on new and current customers. You'll sell a customer at 5,100, they'll come in and they'll upgrade to 2,500. You'll have current customers that will upgrade their liability limits at the very least. And so you may not get a new policy out of it. You may not get them to purchase life insurance that they hadn't previously purchased or something like that, but you are going to get that increase in premium, I promise. You're also going to write more PLUPs, more liability umbrellas. In 2017, our agency wrote 58 umbrella policies, and on most of those 58, if not all of them, we increased liability limits to be able to write them. We went from some kind of lower coverage up to the 2,500 and got the liability umbrella out of it on all 58 of those. And so, even just going from 100, 300 to 2,500, you're talking a $30 to $35 a month increase on in this situation, 2 cars plus the liability umbrella. If you can increase 58 policies in your book by $65, $70 a month, what kind of impact would that have on your business? And I will also promise you that when you get into the life conversation off of this presentation, you're going to write higher premiums. You're not going to be living in the world of 10-year, 20-year terms for $20, $30, $40 a month. You're going to be writing $80, $90, $100, $250 a month premiums. I think the most that I wrote off of this presentation was I wrote a $310 a month premium for a couple off of this that had coverage at work. And they wanted something outside of work because, as we talked about their life insurance, they realized, wow, like I have it at work and I thought it was enough, but if I did get sick and I had to quit my job before I passed away, I wouldn't get paid that. And so they paid an additional $310 a month for the coverage they needed. After I did this presentation with every single client, there was a couple things that I went through. One, I always asked for a referral every single time without fail. You've just taken somebody through a presentation that they've never had before. It's something different than any other agents ever offered them before. And they're saying thank you. It is the perfect time to say, hey, John, I'm so glad I got to take a look at your world and show you how we could protect that against the risks that will come about. I would love nothing more than, as a risk advisor, to be able to help more people evaluate their risks, even if they're not clients of mine. So do you have any friends or family that you think would benefit from having their world looked at and looking at what risks might be a factor for them? Promise you, they will pull their phone out and give you names and numbers. And again, I would approach it as, I'm not trying to sell them my insurance. I honestly don't even care if they switch what they have coverage on to me. If they have their auto and home at Farmers and I'm with State Farm, I don't care if they switch it on that first appointment. If I get a shot at the disability or the life or the long-term care or something else and I get that, eventually it's all going to come back around. And so a referral is a referral, and all you have to do is ask. And this is the perfect candidate to ask. The other thing I would do is, because I've taken that on that white piece of paper that you pulled out at the beginning, I've done that whole diagram on there as we're walking through it. I would go make a copy of it, bring it back to the desk, and I would sit down and I would write my recommendations on that diagram for them and say, hey, John, it's great that we got the liability policy set up for you today. I'm so happy for that. I'm glad we were able to plug that hole for you. I just wanted to write on here what the recommendation that I'm making for you on the life insurance and the disability is, as well. So you have this and you have a copy of this to take home. And then I would also file the copy that I had. I would file that away for future appointments, because every 12 months, I'm going to set up a process to invite them back in for a review. And I'm going to sit down and I'm going to pull out the copy that we did a year ago. And I'm going to say, okay, John, what has changed in your world since the last time we spoke? And I'm going to add to that. And then I'm going to go through the recommendation. Okay, John, a year ago, we made a recommendation that, we put this in place for your life insurance. Is that still a priority to you? Is that something that you're still concerned with? Or did you get something in place in the last year? And I'm going to go through those recommendations again and then ask him again, hey, John, at this point, what's the highest priority for you as far as covering your risks? And I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to shut up and let him talk again. And I'm going to do that every 12 months with all of my clients, invite them in for that review. And over the course of time, I'm going to cover every single one of those risks for my clients, and they're never going to go anywhere. My lapse can is going to go so far down. In our MOA office, which is a second office, is a brand new office in its first 6 months when I came on at State Farm. And acceptable lapse can at the time in our area for a new office within its first 3 years was 40%. Our lapse can was under 20 all 3 years in a row that I was there, or I was just over that office. It was under 20%. Our highest was 19.8% that we were at. And it's because we did this presentation. Our clients didn't go anywhere because no other agent was going to give them this kind of attention. And it wasn't about price. Geico, Progressive, some of those internet companies, like, they don't have an agent that's going to sit down and go through the risks. And the reality is the agent down the street at Farmers or Liberty Mutual or Allstate or, State Farm or whatever other company it would be, isn't going to give them the time that I gave them. And so it's not a question of, hey, my rate went up $10, I'm switching now. It was a question of, what do you recommend I do to protect this? And they felt comfortable. So if you maximize this, your customers will not feel like they're being sold higher premiums. Instead, they're going to sell themselves based on what they find important. You're just helping them put what they need / want in place and this is important. You're positioning yourself as a personal risk advisor to them and not their insurance agent. An insurance agent, they can get anywhere. A personal risk advisor, they can only get with you. And when you take that approach, what you find is your customers are going to be thankful. They're going to buy in, and you're going to have less turnover. So that is the Your World presentation that we use in our agency that allowed 58 liability umbrellas in 2017. It allowed me to be the top premium earner for 2 years running in my district. And it's a presentation that has allowed multiple agent aspirants be able to use and show that they can write premium at a level of where they've been given agencies by State Farm now. And it also allowed me, an independent brokerage, to not just build that brokerage up, but build it up in a way that I wasn't writing minimum and undercutting price for people. I was able to put people with the policies that they needed and wanted. And it gets away from that price conversation. So that is, how to write higher premium policies and how to go forward with that.